Welcome to the Recover You podcast. I'm Kylene.
And I'm Patrick.
We are a couple in recovery
from sex addiction
and betrayal trauma. Together, we share our story to encourage you on your journey. It's here that we talk about sex addiction, betrayal trauma, mental, emotional, and physical health, faith, and anything and everything needed to recover you to your most authentic self that God created you to be. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Recover You. Hi, Patrick.
Hello, Kylene.
Why are you making fun of me right now? I was just adjusting the microphone to make sure that
we've had microphone issues on our podcast. Yeah. So yes. Yeah.
All right. So today, credit where credit is due. The questions that we're going to discuss today were written by my brother-in-law and my sister, I think, and he kind of tweaked some wording if they found a question somewhere. But we are part of this group at our church that meets approximately once a month, and sometimes we'll skip depending on what's going on. The group might not meet 1 month or whatever, but generally speaking, we meet about once a month. And they decided to do a marriage panel recently, and they had 3 couples that were various ages and had been married for different periods of time. So 5 years, 50 years, and 35 years, or something like that. So the idea was bring in these couples with time and experience under their belt and have them sort of share and answer some questions. And it was a fun thing. Patrick didn't have the opportunity to be there, so it was just me. But I thought the questions were pretty good, and I thought, it'd be really cool to answer these on the podcast and also to share them with all of you in case any of them are questions that might spur good conversation with your partner. I will say this is, we try to give content for all of the seasons of recovery in this podcast. And a lot of season 1 of this podcast was for, right after discovery, the initial phases of recovery, sort of that first 6 months to a year kind of stuff. This is probably, some of these questions are probably when you're in the rebuilding phase of your relationship, or when you guys are, when stability has been very securely established, you know what I mean? Even the first couple questions about, hey, let's sit down and talk about how we met, or when did we know we got married? In the first 6 months, that might be kind of triggering.
When did we know we got married?
When did we know we wanted to get married? When was there a moment you woke up and you knew that you were married to me?
I pretty much knew on our wedding day, but that was me. Yeah.
But no, I remember. So I don't know how many months into recovery or discovery this was, but I was asked. It was very raw still, and I was like, divorce is very, very clearly still on the table. I don't know where this is going to go. And someone at church was having a bridal shower, and people asked me, hey, will you be on this panel of your husband fills out the answers to these questions, and then you sit up there and you answer them and see if you got the same answer, right? And I should have said no, because it just wasn't the appropriate time for me to be authentic and relaxed and silly and enjoy that process at all. It was kind of triggering, to do that. So that's kind of what I mean when I'm saying some of these questions may not be for the phase that you're in, reminiscing or thinking about different things. But if nothing else, you'll get to know me and Patrick a little bit more. And then for some of you out there, maybe some of these questions will be thought-provoking and things that you can discuss in your own relationship. So that being said, there's quite a few questions, so let's hop right in. So number 1, how did we meet? Do you want to tell the story?
Sure. We met in person. We actually met online first via Facebook. But
through my best friend who connected us. We didn't randomly connect on Facebook. Right.
Yeah. So
it was a setup.
Yeah. So Keegan and I lived in this development, and a woman came by who had a girl who was about Keegan's age. And so we connected, not in a romantic way, just,
we have kids the same age.
Introduced, yeah. And she had somebody who helped her, because she was a single mother. She had somebody help her with caring for her daughter when she had to work, and that was your friend.
Yeah.
And so over the time, and we met pretty early. I moved in July, so we met and we were hanging out, kind of community parties and stuff like that. And then her nanny, your friend, at one point asked me, what are you looking for in a woman? and I forget exactly what I said, but she's like, I know somebody, and it was a picture of you and your boyfriend, and he was lovely. But so I was like, well, that's great. She's got a boyfriend, yeah, and whatever. And she's like, oh, she's going to break up with
She
him
was
soon.
so funny because she literally started working on both of us kind of separately, and she was like, "Hey, would you ever be interested in?" This is after that boyfriend and I broke up. We started talking about what I'm looking for, and then I was sharing some things that I was looking for. She's like, "Oh, I have this guy," and she was like, "Well, would you marry someone that's older? Would you be interested in someone that has a kid?" And
You were like, no and no.
yeah, in my mind, it ended up being like having Keegan was awesome in the long run. But at the time, I was in my mid 20s, and that wasn't like on my radar. It's like, yes, that's something I'm looking to do, right? Is like be a stepmom or anything like that. And I wasn't really sure about that when she was kind of presenting it that way, and then she started sending me pictures, and I was like, well, I'll think about it. And then we
What did they say? I had Riz.
there you go. So then
No, I guess I didn't have Riz. My pictures had more Riz than I did in person.
they set up this thing where we met in person, and we went, and then he didn't talk to me.
Yeah. I didn't ruin it because I didn't talk to her.
Okay, that's one interpretation.
Yeah.
Well, it all worked out.
Yes, it all worked out.
We started actually
Hanging out,
talking to each other. Well, part of it was when we had conversation online. Patrick has a strong sense of humor, and when you don't hear tone and you're not with somebody and you don't have really like their personality, you're not familiar with that. I really didn't know how to take it at the time, and so meeting him in person was much better. And then,
my jokes had more context.
but honestly, the first time we actually went on a date where it was just you and me, because that party obviously was like, okay,
It was weird.
you like didn't talk to me at all, literally.
Yeah.
But the first time we went on a date one-on-one, we talked, we closed everything down. I mean, it was like late into the night, and we just were really connecting in it.
Yeah.
Then it went from there. So I'm curious how you're going to answer this question, actually. How or when did you know that you wanted to get married?
Oh, it was very early on. I mean, very, very early on. I would say we met in person the day after Thanksgiving, I think. So it was probably January when I was like,
Yeah.
where I was basically like, if this keeps going the way it's going,
Yeah, it was pretty fast.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know that this is the answer to that question per
She's
se.
like yesterday.
But we did meet, right, like it was November 24th or 25th?
25th.
25th. And December, so literally 1 month is away is Christmas, right? And so you've just known somebody for a month. It's really early. So I gave him the most risky Christmas present you could possibly give someone that you just met.
Yeah.
And it was a money clip that had the date that we met engraved on it.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where, okay, well, if this goes well and this is a really special relationship, then you have something engraved with the date that we met. And if it doesn't go well, I just made a fool of myself because that's like way too much too soon.
Yeah. I still use that money clip.
Yeah.
So there's the answer.
It worked out.
Yeah.
So yeah, we knew pretty bad. I don't know if there was like a moment necessarily, like we definitely had some ups and downs the first year figuring out like, hey, is this going to work? Like,
Yeah.
are you really committed? But I will say you made it clear. It was like within like 2 weeks or something. I think that you said, hey, it was within about 2 weeks, I think. Or was it 2 months?
That fast. It was probably within
2 months.
Yeah.
You were kind of like, hey, can we be exclusive?
Yeah.
Or however you said
And you were
that.
like, I'll think about it.
Well, listen, at that point I had been divorced, and you need to be sure. You want to make sure that
Yeah.
So
How are you feeling about that now?
that's actually pretty good. That did I not commit right away to that? I had
Yeah,
to
you didn't have to think. Like, okay.
Oh, but you just said I was like, hey, give me a second. Did
No,
you
I
really
was
say that or
joking.
no? Oh, okay. All right. So I was like, oh, okay. I guess we will. Okay. All right. Moving into some of the deeper questions here. Okay.
Those were pretty deep.
Those were pretty deep. Oh, so, man, we're okay. Well, just hold
That concludes the podcast.
Okay. Do you think that we connect through shared interests, or are we a case of opposites attract?
We're definitely not opposites attract. I mean, we certainly have we have a shared vision on. We definitely are are aligned in this field. So like we have a lot of conversations about healing. We have a lot of conversations about helping people out, but betrayed and the addicted, and we coordinate. So I think we're very aligned on that. I mean, there's certainly some disparate interests. You know what I mean? Like I really like football. You hate football. I would go to a football game. You were like, that's the last thing in the world I ever want to do. So I think we've clearly determined that the Lego wreath that we got for Christmas holds little that we're supposed to build together holds little to no value in your mind than it does in my mind, which I think is the coolest thing ever.
Like hobbies, like in
Yeah.
terms of like interests,
Uh-huh.
though, like I mean, we both like music.
I like World War II,
We're both passionate about
helping people.
helping people.
Yes.
We both share strong faith views,
Right.
similar
Right.
faith views.
We love Keegan.
Well, yes, we're both very into parenting.
Yes. Yes.
We love our pets. So, I mean, I think there's a lot for
Oh, of
sure
course.
of the
Yeah.
connection piece of like things we enjoy a lot of similar things in terms of like spending time together, hanging out on the couch and watching a Netflix show together. And like that's the show that we watch episodes together. And then I will have different shows that maybe
Right,
I watch or,
Yeah.
stuff like that. But
Yeah, I think sometimes too, it's like, and I think it's just kind of the way relationships go. I think you're absolutely right. We want to help people. We want to educate more people when it comes to this. I think you would very, very much love it if I quit my job tomorrow and created a retreat center where we would do that. And
it'd be so cool. But yeah, I
but
get it.
I'm like, I
That's
don't know if
okay.
I want to do that. You
That's
know what I
okay.
mean? So
That's okay. So do you think you said you thought we were kind of opposites. You think that's just because we like some different things?
I actually don't think to me, the word opposites means like you're messy, I'm clean. You're financially literate, I'm financially illiterate. Like I don't think we're that far apart
Yeah.
on it. I think there's just some things that we're very much aligned. I would say
certain interests that like you have interests that aren't mine, I have interests that aren't yours, and then we have a lot of shared
yes
stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Have we developed distinct roles for each partner? For example, do you find that one partner tends to do the dishes more often, or does one partner handle the finances? And was this role, if we have that, was it intentional?
You clearly plan out the podcasts, and I come along for the ride.
It's true.
I clearly do the dishes. You clearly don't. So
It's
I don't
a
know.
judgment-free zone, Patrick.
Yeah, no, I think we just fall into it. Really, what's telling is I just generally have more energy than you. So because of that, I'm going to be able to get up at 4 a.m., go catch a flight. That's not your thing. So I don't know if it's just we've planned out what we're going to do.
Yeah.
There's a whole part of our story where because I've always handled the finances. Now they're finances with openness and accountability, because you know what I mean. So like that has changed in the sense of where it always needed to be versus what it was when I was in my addiction.
Yeah, I think we never sat down and said, okay, you're going to be the person that cleans the house. You're going to be the person that does the laundry. You're going to be the person that does this. We both kind of do all of it, but there will be one person that does it more frequently than the other person.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other person will do it, depending on what's going on. And to your point, there's a lot of times where I've been really fatigued or,
Mm-hmm.
different things that you sort of just like take up the extra, which is always really nice. And but I don't think in terms of like roles, we were never really like, this is your job and this is like expected of you. But you do sort of figure out like, I really don't like washing the dishes.
I know.
But you don't mind it at all.
I don't. I actually kind of enjoy it.
I don't mind vacuuming really. But I don't really. I'm trying to think. Like, do you never really vacuum?
I don't.
Yeah.
It's not really a thing. That's why when the Roomba broke, I was like, oh man.
Right. And and so you'd like, so I don't think in that sense we've really like split it apart as much as we just sort of like do the things that bother us the least, I guess, in a way. And it sort of works out that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, looking back on everything that we've gone through, that the way we've interacted in those areas has shifted over time.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were together and I was younger and I did have a lot more energy, and and that was pre-cancer treatment and all this kind of stuff. I think I did get more done to an extent. And then cancer kind of knocked me down. And then a year and a half after cancer, betrayal just really kind of shut things down. And I was very lethargic. I was very depressed. So things did shift. You ended up taking a lot more on in terms of like household stuff. The finances too. Like I had trusted you so implicitly that like I never even looked in them really. And so then that dramatically changed with Discovery, where I had to see everything. You couldn't have access to cash, all those sorts of things. And now that we're really in recovery, that's really calmed down a lot. You now send me financial reports, and I still have access to everything, but I'm not really, in there, so doing it. So was it intentional? Not really. We just sort of managed it based on who feels good that day, who's good at what, and where we are in the relationship. Okay, these have to do with boundaries. How have you balanced your interests with your shared life?
I
think to an extent,
communication. I'll go, hey, I'd really like to go back. My West Point 35-year reunion's coming up. I'd really like to go back for it. You're like, well, have fun. I don't like spring it on you and be like, hey, it's Friday morning. I'm leaving for the reunion. You know what I mean? But that would be a good example where that's just not your scene. And I'm hanging out with all my buddies that, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's just planning ahead. Go, hey, I'm going back. Yeah.
So I think part of that answer is we just sort of like let each other, or I would say not let, like you have control over the other person, but like encourage the other person to do the things that they like.
Right.
So like I'm putting on a recital at the end of the month and you're super, super supportive of that. You're not really involved in that other than you will be singing into it with me. But but that's not like a huge thing for you other than that one.
It's a vocal break for you. Is what it is. Yeah.
And no, I have to sing with you.
I know. It's like 4 words the whole time.
So, and then like you'll go do something that you like, or I think the line with that comes in terms of boundaries is okay, so like football, for example. You really like football, but if it was something where you were like spending excessive amounts of time with the TV on, in a way that like we couldn't engage together and it was taking away from the relationship or like things that we wanted to do together, there is a level of like too much of that. So you just basically are like, hey, this is on. You always tell me in advance. You're like, I want to watch this game. I want to watch this game, whatever. It's on Sunday at this time. And I'm like, okay. And then I'll just sit there with you and, get on my phone or, do something else. So, but that's when you're thinking about a boundary, I guess that's the only thing. It's like if someone was like a gamer, it's not that they can't play games, but like to what extent does that take away from the time that you have together?
That's right. Yeah.
Or something that's important that needs to get done.
Yeah.
Other than that, we definitely encourage, you go do things that make you happy. I go do things that make me happy and hang out with our individual friends. And then we have mutual things that we do together. How have you developed healthy boundaries with extended family members? I think sometimes what may come up in this question for people is like in-laws and things like that. And I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, that either one of us really had any big issues in that area, which we're very lucky. We both had like really great in-laws that were just like super kind and really wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, I really don't, I think this whole betrayal, sex addiction thing was hard on all of our in-laws. I think we experienced that. And, occasionally you may say, well, I wish they had done this or I wish they had done that. But it was just an incredibly hard situation that I created that, how are you supposed to react to it? And I think there's this notion of, hey, we wish this act of support came out or that act of support came out. But I think we have very much made it known though that we're not the pop in, like can't just pop in on us. I think we've put that out there. You know what I mean? I like, because they don't pop in on us, you know what I mean? And stuff like that.
My family they don't really do that anyway.
Yeah. And mine are geographically distant. So you couldn't do it if you wanted to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
the only thing that comes to mind here with me, I guess, a little bit is there's a difference between like verbalized boundaries and then boundaries that you just sort of set for yourself that you keep. So, for example, Patrick was bringing up the betrayal and the recovery process. And so there was a little bit for me with certain family members where I did intentionally distance. Like I was not going to share as much of what was going on because when I did share some things, the responses were not helpful. But that wasn't I'm going to sit this person down and have a conversation and set a really strong boundary and potentially like cause rupture in the relationship. I just personally pulled back the amount that I would have maybe told them or leaned on them for support because it wasn't really being offered in a way that I felt good about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think sometimes with boundaries, that's important too. It's not always something that has to be expressed. Sometimes it's something that you can just change in the dynamic of the relationship yourself to make it a little bit more comfortable.
I think also, I think we are very fortunate in a lot of ways that our families are supportive of us.
Yeah.
In the ways that they can be supportive.
Right.
And so I think we don't have people butting in. We don't have any of that happening. You know what I mean? And so that's nice.
Yeah. Well, and you just mentioned a point that's really important, which is, people show up in the way that they know how to show up.
Mm-hmm.
So I think having the concept of like really understanding who those people are and what they are good or maybe not good at, or what they're aware of or not aware of, and then giving them grace to be humans that may not show up in the exact way that you feel would be the most helpful, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So again, that's kind of why it's like, do you have a conversation that is going to cause rupture in the relationship, or do you just self-adjust to make it manageable? And sometimes that's okay. Other times a conversation is important and that has to be done. Mm. How did a new family role, so the examples he gave here were becoming parents or grandparents, caring for an elderly parent, change you or your relationship? Well, the new family role for us was blending a family for sure. That was one thing. What challenges did this new role present and what rewards? So if we go from that example, we were sort of thrust into that very quickly. So, we all three of us spent a significant amount of time together before we got married, but nobody prepares you for what a blended family looks like or how to manage conflict or perceived power dynamics when the relations change because now you're all under the same roof. So me personally, well, me and Keegan really, we struggled a lot with that. And we didn't have this opportunity of like, hey, we've been married for so many years before we introduced this. We got married and this was our family. And so there were a lot of really difficult interactions as we sort of tried to, and I was very young and I didn't have any of the education that I have now around like how brains work or how to communicate well or effectively, or, no experience other than babysitting, really how to be a parent. Right. And so it was one of those learn as you go situations. And it was very, very hard. So I think that was difficult. It would be hard for me to answer like how it changed our relationship because in a sense, that's kind of how our relationship was forged in a way because it just all came to be at the same time.
Yeah. Blended families are really hard. I remember thinking through a couple things like, okay, you're instant mom. And as I look back now, like that was probably really hard for Keegan because he's like, oh, what? And because he was 7, 8, in that range. And then I remember when things could be difficult between you and Keegan, I'd be like, well, it's not really your responsibility. So I'm just going to take it because then it's just easier for you. You know what I mean? And stuff like that. And so it was just, there was, to your point, through much of that, we weren't in a healing mindset, and so it was just the blended families are just hard. And if you're well intentioned, though, I would say the way we are now is you get to a point where it does actually work out, and and you're kind to each other, and you express mistakes, and you're sorry for those mistakes, and all these different things. So I spent the last weekend with Keegan, and it was just really nice. He was really open. He wanted to talk about a lot of things. He's just a really nice kid.
Well,
Man.
the reward to answer that part of the question is Keegan. It was, never something that I could have like expected or predicted or planned for in any way. But to your point, you visited him last weekend, and we got on the phone a couple times while you were visiting, and had a chance to talk to Keegan, and this was like the biggest like moment for me, and that was he said, "Mom, you and I are really similar, and I like that."
Yeah.
Like, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a really big. It's like I mentioned to you, he also wants to do, he got me like a West Point pendant that he'll give me at some point. And how it sort of resonated with me that I would always have adopted him had situationally that been appropriate, and it just never was. But the way some of the things he's done recently almost makes me feel like he's adopting me.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
that's been like huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anything else that you can think of in terms of like new roles or that changing our relationship or
No.
yeah. I think the challenges were really like how do you interact as a couple and connect, and one of the challenges that we sort of had was like upholding the values of the other person as a parent because we viewed parenting a little bit differently, and there were some inconsistencies in how we would follow through with things. So if like we would have certain expectations or guidelines around gaming or computer usage, and then Patrick would be the nice dad and kind of usurp that a little bit and pull those down a little soon. That did cause friction. And so the two of us kind of pulled back and forth a little bit with that, like trying to create some consistency and stability there. So I think that was probably the biggest challenge. Like if people say, what did you guys ever fight about in a relationship? I'd say that's like the one thing that we would kind of have conflict over would be how to manage those situations. That was tough.
And I think a lot of that happened discovery.
Oh yeah.
So one of the things that I learned to do through that is I was kind of a people pleaser in a way. So I'd be like, okay, this is what Kylene wants, as opposed to saying, hey, I think that might be a little bit more strict than we need to be, and kind of pushing back, a little bit. I think I'd be like, okay, and then I'd be like, well, then I'd be like,
undermine it.
I'd be like, well, that seems more strict than it needs to be, and stuff like that.
So I think maybe our conversations would have been very different if we knew then what we know now. If we had the skills that we have now, it would have been different. Okay, how do we maintain our connection with each other, and has this changed over the years? Yes, it has. Do you want to answer that question?
I mean, we talk all the time. And we kind of did that before, but I think there's so much more depth in our conversations now. You know what I mean? And we talk about different things, and I will say, like the point I just made, I'm more apt to say if something's bothering me now, or say if I disagree with something. You know what I mean? Like that is so much more the case. I used to kind of be like, well, I'm like physically the strongest person here. I'll just manage everything.
Yeah.
And and I can go with the flow. And I am very much a go with the flow person, but I think I would go with the flow to the point of like being against what I wanted.
And and I think what we just sort of brought up is the problem with that is that may be the surface level response, but then you might sabotage that subconsciously. Right. So then you go in and you do something different. So if you disagree, it's like, well, let's not have conflict about it, but let me just go do something else on my own without having a conversation. And so, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that it's important that if there is some disagreement, that it's verbalized. So you can kind of work it out. So maintaining connection. Yeah, I mean, we just talk all the time about everything. I mean, literally everything. Like, what did you do today? What conversations did you have? For a long time, it was about his recovery and what you were learning in recovery.
Yeah.
I can't help it. I'm just like, I worked on this today, and I did this today, and I need to memorize my music today, and will you help me? And then, as much as we can, we try to just spend time together.
Yeah.
So be in the same room, and hang out and do different things and watch a show
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
talk about different things that are going on. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think anything else that we do. Like, I mean, we try to go out, but sometimes we'd rather stay in.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
like
That's
even Valentine's Day, we were like, let's not go out. Let's just make a fancy dinner at home ourselves. So much more chill, so much more relaxed. I like that. I guess I'm a little bit of a
homebody.
homebody. Yeah. What has been a couple of key ingredients for maintaining your relationship?
Oh, I mean, I believe this to my core. I think deep down we respect and admire the other. And even through really, really hard times, that's the center that we come back to. I think that's why you stayed. I think you were like, I really admire who you are and who you can be.
Yeah.
And so then you were like, okay, are you going to do the work that actually matches that?
Yeah.
Versus like I never really liked, your face makes me nauseous. It wasn't one of those kinds of things. So like,
For a period of time. No.
um, but like and the same thing, when we have disagreements, I'm like, well, was I a little too harsh, and stuff like that. So like, because we have them. I mean, every couple has disagreements, and so I think that is a fundamental thing. It's like at the end of the day, I want to still provide for you. I still want to,
Yeah.
I still want to be. I want to provide a good life for you. I want to do all of those things for you. And so sometimes because of emotions or fatigue or whatever, things go a little awry.
Yeah.
But.
I would agree. I would say respect for sure, mutual respect.
Mhm.
Like I like you as a person. I always talk about that, like with my clients and stuff. Is like, you know, do you have a good friendship? Do you like the person you're with? Like those are really, really important. Like if at the core you like the person, then that's important because
Mhm.
that's going to be the friendship level can keep you connected through a lot of things
Right.
while you're working out other things for the spouse connection, you know? So we definitely were always really good friends. I think mutual respect has been huge for sure. And then I think, yeah, we take responsibility and apologize. Both of us do that
Mhm.
when we did that with Keegan and we do that with each other. And I think that, covers a multitude of sins, so to speak, where if you make a mistake or you lose your temper or you say something or, whatever, you get frustrated or whatever it is, you come, first of all, the other person has permission to challenge that and say, hey, that's inappropriate. And that goes both directions. There have been times where you'll kind of go, hey, I really don't think that the way you're handling this is good. And,
Mhm.
I've done that for you. And both of us are able to talk about it and go, okay, you're right. And, I'm sorry.
Right.
And,
Right.
and then, work
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
your behavior. Yeah. So I think those are really, really, really important. Mutual respect for sure, friendship, apologizing. How has your partner, that would be me, helped you through a tough time? And had you planned how you could support each other, or did you react more instinctually?
I mean, obviously, going through my early addiction recovery and all of that process and, processing through my deep traumas and those kinds of things, it was really, really hard. And we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, but it's like, you were upset and angry but you were also very supportive of me through that. Whatever that part of that question, did we plan that out or did we reach out? I mean, it just happened. And so, uh, I mean, I've always said that was your support and your boundaries and your ass kicking was one of the legs of the three-legged stool of my recovery.
Yeah. So I helped you by being your friend and
Hmm.
setting boundaries, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, absolutely.
And kind of
Yeah,
loving you through it in a way with
yeah,
while
yeah.
also not hiding my feelings about
Displeasure.
it.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
I tried. There were days.
yeah. Oh no, I get it.
There were many, many days.
Yeah.
How have you helped me? You are just like really good at taking care of people. You're
Mhm.
really good at it. So I think it's a little bit second nature to you. So if I am sick or like when I went through chemo, and even when I was going through betrayal recovery, one of your biggest strengths is patience, for sure. So you're very like slow to react usually with things. But also like if something is hard for a long period of time, you really have the patience to like stick something out and know that it's going to get better.
Mhm.
And so if I am really struggling with something, or I'm sick, or I was recovering from cancer, or I was depressed from the betrayal. I mean, especially with the betrayal, because you were like, well, I sort of did this to her.
Mhm.
So you were just like really patient through that process.
Yeah.
And you always ask me like, what do I need? You'll do little things like bring me, I don't know, like cookies back home from the store, like
Yeah.
different things like that.
Mhm.
So I think, yeah, I think your patience, and I think sincerity, and like wanting to help me. You basically, I guess if I just summarize that, you just show up very consistently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, this is a big question.
Big question.
Big question. How do we resolve conflicts? And within that, do we have intentional strategies for this, like to resolve conflicts, or is it more experiential?
Well, we always
We don't have, well,
we operate on the statement
no,
that
we're
I'm
gonna have a
always
conflict
right.
right now that we don't have conflict. No. What?
We always operate on the statement that I am right, and then number two, we refer back to number one if there's any sort of
Delete. Okay.
No, I think we just talk it out. I mean, I think because the I think we both lean into problem solving. I think that's what we do. So like when you have conflicts, there's emotion, right? Sometimes the emotion prevents you from leaning in to solve it. But I think we just keep leaning in to solve it. I think we just keep going back until it's like resolved.
I think the key with that is though, because people can do that, but
Mhm.
but that concept can end up with residual conflict where it's escalated and you're yelling at each other every time if you keep revisiting the same thing. So I think the key to what you're trying to say is that we do it in a way where we really do give the other person the benefit of the doubt while we're doing it.
Mhm.
So it's not, I mean, outside of like some of the absolute most intense parts of discovery, I'm like where I probably did say some things that were accusatory and calling names, or different things like
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
Outside of like the most inflammatory, like shocking moments of our relationship, we don't call each other names. We don't like attack the other person. I mean, like as a joke sometimes. We do. It's yeah. What do you call that? Like an inside joke kind of thing.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
But not in an accusatory, inflammatory, like degrading way ever. That. So I think that's the key. So to your point, like we both want to solve the problem, but we do that because on both sides, our goal is to connect after this conflict. The goal is resolution and connection. It's not necessarily, I mean, yes, we want to win. I mean, win in a sense, like everybody wants to be right, but not to the point of like a power over dynamic in the relationship where you have to put the other person down. So we really do want to resolve it. And so I think a lot of times it's the sticking it through in the moment of the conflict until it's resolved, instead of not resolving it in the moment and then having to come back to it a week later with it still being unresolved, and then a week later and it's still being
Yeah, that's a good
unresolved.
point. I think we do put it to bed.
So, well, I think the time that we didn't do that would have been the parenting stuff that we were talking about. That was a little bit of a friction point that did come up because it wasn't really ever resolved and never really did get fully resolved. So that keep coming up and causing a little bit of friction. Now we really do essentially cry it out, talk it out, discuss it out, sit it out, stay through it until we can essentially get to the point where, I don't know, is it that we see the other person's point of view, or we feel seen and heard and understood in that moment on both sides. Whatever it is, that conflict or that hurt feeling or that insecurity gets resolved. And sometimes that does mean that these conflicts last like an hour and a half or 2 hours.
Yeah.
They're few and far between now, but I think we just set everything else aside and finish the conversation. And I do think that really helps, because then it brings us back to connection and then we move on. So I don't think that was something necessarily planned, other than through recovery. Part of the process was essentially learning how to you learned specifically how to sit through that. And so then we had the ability at that point to sit it out and talk it out. So I think you being able to do that did shift during recovery for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think that's big. I do think that's big. And I also think we communicate. So if we don't communicate really attacking each other and accusing each other, what do? We might have a blow up where things aren't handled super great, where maybe there is more accusation or a little bit more negative communication. But in the resolution process, it's more about communicating what the insecurity is, what the fear is, how this is making me feel. And I think having those conversations, and just really getting to the root of it over the course of whatever, an hour and a half, 2 hours, then you really see what the other person is feeling and thinking, and then you can respond, and then you can resolve it. Yeah. How do we recognize when your partner is going through a tough time?
Oh, I can see it on your face.
In my head, out my mouth. I'll probably tell you.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're very much a emotion on your sleeve. I think probably I'm a little bit different, but you're very much an emotion on your sleeve type of person. I can tell right away.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, I'll text you if I'm not feeling good. I'll tell you when you get home if I'm not feeling good. I will also usually tell you exactly what I need. Like, I need a hug right now, or I need some affirmation, or come sit next to me.
Parade.
What?
Parade.
Give me a parade. No, I need some affirmation. Come sit on the couch next to me, or whatever.
Yeah.
You are basically, you'll kind of get quiet. I think you go into your head and you think if you're not feeling good. You have gotten a lot better. Like just the other day, you were like, I have a little anxiety and I don't know why. So now you will verbalize it. Whereas before I'd just be like, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? You'd be like, nothing's wrong. And then the next day you'd go, oh yeah, I was anxious. And it took you that time to process. Right. So you learning how to actually name it has shifted that. But I can kind of tell when you're off. And I think I just tell you when I'm off. Yeah. So what do we do to respond to that signal? Well, I ask you. I'm like, what's wrong?
I run away.
I mean, does it
No, I generally will ask you, hey, what can I do for you?
But does it help that I sort of like preemptively tell you most of the time?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Is that helpful?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where I'm like, hey, I need a hug, or So I identify it and then I just tell you.
Yeah. I think it's hard for me to kind of articulate what I need in when I'm feeling, because like the other night I was like, I don't know, I maybe I need a GABA, maybe I don't know, I don't really know.
But we talked about it a little bit, so I kind of pursued it a little bit,
and
asked you some questions, and we didn't. It wasn't like a dramatic like thing. We just talked about it a little bit, and then I asked you when we went to bed, hey, are you still feeling anxiety? And you said no. And so
and that was that.
Yeah. So just try to anticipate or like ask questions or respond to what the other person. Okay. What are one or two things that you really like about me?
Do I have to stop at one or two?
No, you can go on. Feel free.
I think you have a really pretty face, and I know that's very superficial, but it's really one of the things I enjoy. Like you're just and I know you don't think you are, but you're always pretty in any stage. Waking up in the morning, going to bed at night, singing, whatever. You just have a real radiance to you.
Aww,
so that's really nice. I think
you're pretty too, Patrick.
Thank you. It's my eyes. I think, and then number two, I think you are a very clear thinker, and it is helpful sometimes because I wrestle with some things, and I help other plants improve, and sometimes I'm kind of stuck on how I want to approach it, and then you'll kind of remind me of some things. So you're so you're a very clear thinker.
Oh, I like that. Thank you. Yeah. That was only two. You can keep going if you'd like.
No.
That's it? Okay.
That's it.
Well, I already mentioned your patience. I think that's for sure like a high quality that
Hurry up and get to number two.
Yeah. So I definitely really like that. I also really like you are someone that really likes to learn. And I think that's important because when people are interested in learning, it means that you can grow throughout your life and change your thoughts and perceptions about the world and behaviors throughout life. If you were just like content to be and not learn anything, you would be who you were 20 years ago,
Right.
and we wouldn't be here today. So I
Yeah.
like that you learn, but not just that you learn, that you absorb it and apply things to your life. I think we both try to do that a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that has helped, because I've mentioned this before on the podcast, that even when I learn new things, if it's important to me, you will, what I call, learn the language. So you learned healing language and all these things that I was talking about before you went and got the same certifications and then learned it in a different capacity.
Yeah.
You already had the capability to talk with me about the things that I was learning, the things that were impacting my life, and the way I was, coaching or wanting to help people
Yeah.
before you actually, like, quote unquote, learn the material. So you listen and you absorb and you apply, and I really like that. Name one or two ways your partner has changed for the better since you've been married, and were these intentional changes?
I mean, you've certainly become more confident in like your. I think it's like it's kind of hard. Like you've become more comfortable in the role as a mom. You've become more comfortable like through this process. Like, and I think it goes back to my point about being a clear thinker. And I don't know if you feel this way or not, but you have like a destination sometimes, and then you grow into that destination. And so like that's been very helpful for me. It's been very helpful for I think your relationship with Keegan. It's been very helpful for like what you want to do. And you may not always feel that way, but I think, and I know you don't always feel confident, and sometimes you feel very insecure and all those things. But I think I've seen you grow more confident as that's
More
been
grounded, maybe.
yeah, yeah, and like you're a little bit more comfortable with. I think you've always been really comfortable with what you believe, but I think you've seen those beliefs turn into positive results, and that has been kind of a nice thing for me to watch that in you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I think
Yeah.
feel more aligned in who I am, I guess.
Yeah, and maybe less worried about criticism because of that. I
Mm-hmm.
know criticism always hurts, or
Yeah.
disagreement hurts and all that stuff, but I
Mm-hmm.
think you're less like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Look, how have you changed for the better?
I've had 2 knee surgeries. That's a pain.
Man.
Yeah.
Well, I think I just mentioned it essentially in the last one. I think, like, I do really, to a large extent, view you as a different person before and after. You were always nice in a lot of ways, and you had a lot of like personality things that have carried through. But in terms of like almost your identity and like who you are, your spirituality has increased dramatically in terms of knowing what you believe, believing it on a core level,
Right.
communicating it with other people in the way that you help people and are able to have conversations about those things. It's very different now. Like, it's not that you didn't have the faith, it's like you were a Christian before, but it's like you really believe what you believe now.
I think I know what it means.
You know what it means. Yeah, you've internalized the concepts, I guess, of forgiveness, of redemption, of God's love, of
Grace.
grace, of who we are to be to other people. And it like shows up really differently. I think sort of we're saying the same thing, in that like going through this process, as horrible as it was, grounded both of us a little bit more, so that we feel a little more aligned in the world.
Yeah.
Showing up a little
Great.
more
Yep.
authentically and
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. And that's better, and I like it. Was it intentional? No, we were thrown into the fire.
Yeah.
And then we were burned to a crisp, and then
And it came out the other side.
came back the other side, yeah. Intentional in the aspect of we always want to learn and grow and not stay stagnant. That's been intentional. What do you think is the most effective way to encourage healthy changes in a relationship?
Well, you got to talk about it. You have to talk about, one of the things that has really identified with me, and I think I used to carry this, was a lot of resentment. And I think we all do this. Mind reading and resentment. It's actually one of the categories on the faster scale, and I think it's either in speeding up or ticked off, but mind reading and resentment. And so if you think about it, it's like we when you mind read, you're filling it out. You're filling out what those people are thinking, as opposed to asking them or displaying to them why you're feeling the way you're feeling, or sometimes you get resentment because you want somebody to do something for you. You just assume that they should know, and then they don't do it. Well, how are they supposed to know? I mean, we all have different thought patterns. We all have different familial patterns. We have all these different things. How are people just supposed to know? Why don't you tell them? You know what I mean? And so I think,
So the communication is important to
yeah,
you,
yeah,
that I do identify how I'm feeling and tell
yeah,
you what
yeah,
I need from that. Like that aspect
absolutely,
is really helpful.
absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Um, what is the most effective way to encourage healthy changes? I do think knowing who you are and having clear expectations and boundaries is important. Making sure those are clearly communicated. I think like within a marriage though, like let's say you're like 10 years in, you guys are kind of working on some residual conflict or some perpetual issues, and you really want to um, make a shift. I think one of the things that's going to be the most important is two people both mutually having the ability to empathize with the other person's perspective
Mhm.
and their perceived reality of what's going on.
Yeah.
Because if you can listen enough to, and it does have to go both ways, but if you can listen enough to the other person to see why this conversation or this perpetual conflict or this unresolved issue keeps coming up and why it's important to them and what their perspective is and why they feel the way they feel. And by the way, how do they feel when they have this conflict? Are they feeling attacked from you? Are they feeling condescended by you? Are they feeling, what is it that is happening in these situations from their perspective?
Mhm.
And then if they can also empathize and learn your perceived reality around this, why is this so important to you? How do you feel when they're talking to you? Like, why, what is the trigger that is escalating our emotions in these situations? Well, you said this particular word to me, and that brings me back to, I was 18 and my ex-boyfriend said this, and it really, I don't like that. It makes me feel disrespected,
Mhm.
when both of you, and I would encourage, if this is going on, like if you want to see change in a specific area, that you talk about it in a moment where things are calm, so that you can then have the capacity to ask those questions and really listen to their answers, and really try to step into the perception of the other person about
Yeah.
why that's important to them. Because I think empathy for sure is the key to change. Because if you don't have empathy, and if you don't have empathy, you're not going to be in a real partnership. It's at some point going to become a one-sided thing. Somebody's going to
Mhm.
be in control of the other person. And really, we want to give both people a voice in the relationship.
Right.
So I think when you want change, it's how do we get to the place where we understand the reasoning behind what's happening,
Mhm.
so that we can then create a plan for resolving this, now understanding the trigger points, the emotions, the values that the other person is trying to get from what's happening,
Hmm.
or the disagreement that's been coming up. But I do think, like in a very, very simplistic way, communication and boundaries are both very important.
Mhm.
Um, all right, we're about to wrap up here. What is the best advice someone gave you when you got married? And I will open this up to first marriage or second marriage.
Hmm.
Did your mom ever give you any
I
advice,
don't
or?
think so. I mean, I don't think any advice was given.
Yeah, I don't either
But
really.
I think part of that's because I put off an air of like I've got it figured out, and so
Hmm.
I think people don't generally offer advice.
Yeah.
Um, I think in there's that question about what piece of advice do you wish somebody had given you, and we can talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But no, I don't remember ever really getting advice.
I don't either, honestly. I don't
Yeah.
remember a lot of like marriage advice or anything.
Hmm.
I do remember in my first marriage, my dad telling me right before I walked down the aisle, "Hey, you don't have to do this." Maybe I should have heeded that warning at the time, but I didn't. So
Hmm.
there's that. What's the worst advice someone gave you when you got married? So I guess the same, right? Like,
Yeah, I don't remember really any advice either way.
I would put like a little asterisk here that, like, if you were raised in the church, it may not be someone specifically like saying, "Hey, Kylene, this is the advice I'm giving you before marriage." But if you there was absolutely a lot of like cultural and spiritual stuff absorbed around marriage, absorbed around sexuality, and absorbed around like purity culture and sex before marriage and like a wife's role in the home. Like a lot of that wasn't necessarily someone sitting me down and going, okay, you're about to get married. Here is what I want to tell you as advice,
Yeah.
as much as it was things that I absorbed maybe in a very like negative way. That, you know, if any of you can resonate that, I highly recommend you following the author Sheila Gregor, because she busts all of those myths and helps us kind of think in a healthy way about marriage and sexuality. But yeah, I just think that's kind of what comes to mind for me is more of the absorbed cultural stuff than like someone sitting me down and saying anything. What's some advice maybe you wish you had when you were married?
Yeah, I really wish, and I don't know who would have given it to me or anything like that, but that whole like, hey, your own personal traumas and limiting beliefs are gonna show up in the relationship, and it's gonna hurt the partner. And so if you can find time to go get, like, I remember people asking me after my accident, and they're like, hey, have you ever been to therapy? And I didn't really know what it was all about, but I was like, nah, I don't think I need it. But then somebody said to me, like, hey, if you don't resolve through this,
Yeah.
this is going to come due, when you get into your next relationship. And like, of course, would I have listened? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I think, that very much, we bring our families of origin into our relationships. We bring our traumas from our previous relationships into our current relationships. And, then sometimes something snaps and you're forced to resolve it and forced to go get the healing that you so richly deserved early on. And you know what I mean? So that's, yeah.
Yeah. Advice I wish I had received. So much. I mean, here's the thing though. Would I have listened to it at the age that I was? I don't know. But there's a lot of advice, like advices around finances, right? Like, advice around always having access to each other's phones,
Right.
emails, bank accounts, periodically, like just making sure you have access to all of those things.
Right.
Make sure that before you're getting married, like it's not an issue if you happen to pick up your partner's phone and look through their text messages. Not that not that it's like, oh, when I'm dating someone, I have to be like super hyper vigilant and like stalk them, but like noticing what happens if you're sitting at a table and you pick up their phone. Are you allowed access? Like, is that a good thing? Just like little things like that, making sure that when you get married, you have all the passwords to everything. There's privacy and there's secrecy. And in a marriage, there should be no secrecy. So no secret bank accounts, nothing that you don't have access to as a spouse, like those sorts of things, just making sure that conversation was had. The idea of like divorce not being the end of the world. I think in a lot of like faith-based, my Christian background, there's this concept, again, it's sort of like this thing that's, absorbed by osmosis, not necessarily spoken out loud, but it's like you're going to have to suffer through some things in marriage. Divorce is like one of the worst choices that you can make. In order to get a divorce, you have to have certain things that have to happen, and you've got to have tried not to do that and to save your marriage, right? And I really wish, instead of saying all of those things, that they would teach people divorce is always on the table. This concept of like at any moment your partner could choose to leave, which means you have to respect them. You have to be, and vice versa, you have to be respected. You have to love them. They have to love you. You should not be having secrets. You shouldn't, all of these different things of like, let's teach people about what a healthy relationship looks like and remind them that like at any moment your partner has the freedom to leave, as opposed to sort of sending this message that like divorce is scary and like the end of the world and you're a bad person if you choose it. That my divorce was the best decision, like one of the best decisions I ever made. And since that day, I've always felt like when people get divorced, I always want to say congratulations. Those decisions are usually not made lightly. They're very difficult decisions. Divorce itself is a very difficult process. By the time you come through that, you deserve a congratulations, because that wasn't something that was easy for you to do.
It's a marathon.
Yeah. So I don't know. I wish that's one thing I wish, like advice wise, like that just the concept of divorce. And then also the idea of like, if you have cold feet, it's not it's not the right person.
Mm-hmm.
I had I had cold feet, so many doubts, almost pulled out of my first marriage, and honestly, I should not have married him, period. With you, even with everything we've gone through, but with you, I did not have any doubts about getting married to you. I was not nervous. I did not have cold feet. I did not have doubts about it. There was not an iota of concern
Mm-hmm.
about marrying you. So I think normalizing cold feet is not really a good thing. Because if you have cold feet, there's probably a reason. You should be so excited to marry the person you're going to marry. You should be so like just over the moon. Like I know in my soul that this is the person I'm supposed to be with. You know what I mean? And I think because we went into it that way and we were so connected that really does play into like why we're still here
Yeah.
after the difficulties we've had.
Mm-hmm.
And then well, I'll save this for the next piece. What advice do you want to give the couples in this room today or on this podcast?
Don't be afraid to be open. Don't be afraid to be open and honest. I mean, honesty is, all those silly things. Honesty is the best policy. You know what I mean? You want to be kind when you deliver it, but I was thinking about, when you would say, hey, I feel like we're in a honeymoon phase, and I disagreed, and then I felt really, really bad about that. But it was important that you talk about, holding things in. Had I just held that in and faked it, you would have been like, what's going on? Like, I couldn't have faked that, right?
Yeah.
I was in a tough spot emotionally. So, I felt like I had to solve all my own problems. You know what I mean? And, a marriage, you actually have the opportunity to have somebody help you. You know what I mean?
Ask for help.
Ask for help.
Lean
So,
on your partner.
I think that's, just communicate. And, don't always explode at your partner but, try to find a time when maybe things aren't crazy where you can sit down and say, hey,
Yeah. I think my advice would be, other than what I already said, I would have maybe wished I was told, take all of that advice as well, would be two pieces. One, it's never too soon to start working on your own wounds, your own traumas, your own issues one-on-one with somebody, and to start navigating. Everybody has them, whether you're 18, 20, 25, 35, 65. We all have experiences in life where it influences how we view the world and how we interact with people and how we might react more strongly if that button is pushed.
Right.
And so it's never too soon to start getting help in resolving those. And then the other piece of advice I'd say is make sure that you guys can navigate conflict in a somewhat healthy way before you get married.
Yep.
So like, has something big enough come up that you've been able to go, hey, we are people that are able to talk through this and then resolve it in a healthy way. Was my partner able to take responsibility if they did something wrong? Am I able to take responsibility? Are we people that apologize to each other? And navigating that, I think that would be a really big thing, having some sort of healthy conflict before marriage. Okay, this should take about 60 seconds each or so. This is our lightning round. We're wrapping it up, and then I'll hand this to you. You can ask me the same question as Patrick. What's my favorite dessert?
What's your favorite dessert? Ice cream.
Probably. Is there a specific? I don't know. Specific kind? No.
Cookies and cream.
No. Okay. Ice cream gets like an 8 out of 10 maybe for.
Right.
I'd say probably like chocolate and ice cream, I guess, if you had to lump them together. All right. Do I prefer laundry or dishes?
Neither.
If I had a choice.
Laundries.
Yeah. What was the last book I read?
We're reading those like dragon novels or whatever.
I was like at the beginning of last year, I was into like some, but no, the last book. So I think the last book that I really got through was a book that I got on audio that a friend of mine recommended, and it was called Messy Grace. So I read that. Listen to it, I guess. All right, what's my favorite TV show? It's kind of hard.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you really, really like Resident Alien right now.
Oh, 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
That was really good.
Yeah. Okay. What's my favorite dessert?
Key lime pie.
Oh, that's a pretty good one. I think I'll give you that one. Do I prefer laundry or dishes?
Dishes, I hope, because you do it all the time.
Okay. What was the last book I read?
Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay.
What was the last book I read?
Oh, wait. I know the one that you're reading right now. Gated grief.
Yes.
Gated grief.
Very good.
Okay.
Very good. And my favorite TV show?
Would you agree with Resident Alien?
No.
No?
No.
Something that has to do with World War II?
Yeah, pretty much. All right.
I don't know specifically. Okay. All right, everybody. Well, we hope that maybe there's a couple thoughts in here that are questions or topics or different little nuggets that you can take home and talk to your partner. And we will actually post the questions in the show notes. So if this is something that you want to print out and talk about over dinner or a date night or the weekend, then this will be here for you. And we hope you have a great week. Remember, every day is a new chance to choose health and freedom. Make that choice today, and we will see you next week.
Woohoo! If you're listening to this, it means you've made it through an entire episode. Part of recovery is spending time engaging in healing and self-growth activities. We are thankful that you chose our podcast to be one of those activities today. Make sure you reward yourself for that accomplishment. If you've enjoyed this episode or this podcast, we would love to hear from you. Please take just a few moments to leave a rating and review, letting us know your experience with Recover You. We not only love hearing how these episodes are helpful, but ratings and reviews help others just like you who are searching for recovery information and support find the podcast too. We can't wait to hear from you. See you next week.